Have you ever wondered what it was like to fight for life in the arena, surrounded by thousands of bloodthirsty spectators? Gladiators were not just fighters, they were legends forged in the fire of battle, but many of their stories have been forgotten hitherto. Today you'll meet Rome's 20 most famous gladiators, warriors who defied fate and marked the empire forever. And believe me, the number 10 will leave you completely shocked. Get ready for epic duels, unexpected betrayals, and immortal glories. Imagine a group of slaves who one day decide to say, enough. They were gladiators, trained to entertain the public with bloody fights, but they only wanted one thing: freedom. Among them was Spartacus, the man who would lead the largest slave revolt the Roman Empire had ever seen. But he didn't do it alone. At his side, there were other incredible leaders such as Crixo, Castus, and Gannicus, each with their skills, personalities, and remarkable stories. Crixo was known for his fury. He was not only a skilled gladiator, he was a man with a thirst for revenge. While many just wanted to escape, Crixus wanted the Romans to pay for all the pain they had caused. Gannicus was the opposite. He seemed to see everything as an exciting challenge. He was a legendary fighter, one of those who left the audience silent with the mastery of each blow. And of course there was Castus, who was more strategic. He knew that brute force was not enough and helped organize the chaos of the movement. It all started with a daring escape. Spartacus and his companions escaped from a gladiatorial school in Capua using cooking utensils as weapons. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? But it worked. Not only did they flee, but they began to beat the Romans in battle, one victory after another. Each triumph attracted more slaves to the movement. People who dropped everything joined the fight and began to believe that perhaps it was possible to defeat the greatest empire on earth. The battles won were not just demonstrations of strength, but cries of despair converted into determination. Each blow was a reminder that freedom had a price, but it was a price they were willing to pay. Imagine the impact of seeing Roman legions, trained and disciplined, being defeated by slaves. It was something unthinkable for the Roman people. Have you ever felt that the stories you know about Rome are always the same, without the real details, emotions, and strategies that defined the greatest empire in history? With that in mind, I created the 10 battles that shaped the empire. This book gets straight to the point, clear, moving, and never-before-seen explanations of how legendary leaders turned battles into historic milestones. You no longer need to get lost in confusing reports. Click on the pinned comment and download now the 10 battles that shaped the Roman Empire. But beware, it is for a limited time. Transform the way you see history and discover what has always been missing in the narratives you thought you knew. Now think with me. Spartacus knew he couldn't rely on brute force alone. He needed courage and, above all, hope. Even in the midst of so many victories, he carried the weight of losses, fallen friends, and captured comrades. But he never lost sight of what motivated him: the dream of a world where no one was treated as property. The Romans began to fear more than the rebels' weapons. They feared the idea that slaves might be more than servants. Therefore, they sent all the power of the empire to crush Spartacus and his allies. Even so, the gladiators continued to resist, demonstrating that when the desire for freedom is greater than the fear of death, nothing can stop a fight. Spartacus was not just a leader, he was a symbol. For the slaves who followed him, he represented the hope of a different future, where no one was treated as an object. Her courage inspired men and women to leave fear behind and join the fight, even though they knew they would face an implacable enemy. Each victory was celebrated with cries of freedom that echoed throughout Italy. Even in the face of difficulties, Spartacus never wavered. He knew that his struggle was bigger than himself, bigger than any individual. He fought for an ideal, for something that could inspire future generations. Each step taken by the gladiators was a reminder that freedom is not granted, but earned with effort, courage, and unity. Before continuing, I saw here that you haven't subscribed to the channel yet. You won't want to miss all the content about Rome that I will always be bringing. Flame was a different gladiator. While most men dreamed of conquering freedom, he did the opposite. He refused it. And it wasn't once, not twice. Flama refused freedom 4 times. Each of them came in the form of a rudis, the wooden sword that symbolized a gladiator's liberation. It was the ultimate reward, the ticket out of a cycle of blood and deaths. But Flama returned the rudis and chose to return to the arena. This Syrian gladiator was more than skilled. He was a living legend. Every fight he faced seemed to reaffirm that he was born for it. For Flama, the arena wasn't just a place of violence, it was where he was invincible. He was not just any slave fighting for survival. He was a star. The crowd cheered him on every victory, and perhaps that was more addictive than the very idea of freedom. After all, how to leave the place where he was a hero? While Flama made history by refusing freedom, another gladiator named Hilarus took a different path. Hilarus also amassed an impressive winning record. He knew what it was like to hear the screams of the crowd, feel the adrenaline rush of combat, and prove his superiority in every fight. But when the Rudes was placed in his hands, Hilarus didn't think twice. He accepted. He left the arena as a winner, with the certainty that his fight was complete. Flame and Hilarus are two sides of the same coin. Both were legendary gladiators, but each faced the arena in a different way. For Hilarus, freedom was the ultimate prize. He struggled to make a life beyond the arena. For Flama, the arena was everything. Each blow struck, each victory, was a reaffirmation that this was the only place where it made sense. And he continued like this until the day he died fighting. Flama's choice may seem incomprehensible, but think for a moment. What would you do if you were in his shoes? Flame knew that outside the arena walls, he would be just another free man. Inside it, he was a legend. He lived and died as he wanted, to the applause of a crowd that has never forgotten him. Hilarus, on the other hand, followed a more common path. He chose freedom, and, with that, he was able to live long enough to tell his stories. He did not cease to be admired, but chose to preserve his life while Flama risked everything for glory. Flame became an immortal figure in gladiatorial history, not only for his victories, but for his refusal to abandon what he believed to be the only place where he truly belonged. His choice defied what many considered common sense, but that was what made him a legend. He did not fear death, he feared perhaps that he would be forgotten. The arena was his life, his purpose, and his way of making his mark. Hilarus, on the other hand, knew that his glory could continue even away from the violence of the arena. These stories lead us to reflect on what really matters. For some, like Flama, it is the intensity of the moment, the search for something that makes them unique and irreplaceable. For others, like Hilarus, it is the peace that comes after battle. And in the end, both conquered what they wanted, each in their own way. And that's what makes their stories so fascinating. It is a reminder that there is no right or wrong choice, only the one that makes sense to those who live. Tell me here in the comments which gladiator you think is the most famous in history. I want to know your opinion. The Colosseum was packed. It was the year 80 AD and the inaugural games were in full swing. Emperor Titus, seated on his tribune, watched intently as thousands of Romans cheered in the stands. That was the perfect stage for an unforgettable show, and that's exactly what Priscus and Vero delivered. Priscus and Verus were no ordinary gladiators. They had experience, technique, and above all, courage. When the two entered the arena, the audience knew that it would not be just any fight. As soon as the match began, it was clear that they were in for something special. The duel was balanced. Priscus had impressive strength, while Vero compensated with strategy and agility. The blows were exchanged with precision. The sound of swords echoed through the Colosseum and the crowd went wild. Time passed, and neither seemed willing to give in. Each attack was met with impeccable defense, and the tension in the arena increased by the moment. Spectators could not avert their eyes. The fight between Priscus and Vero was not just a fight. It was a spectacle of endurance and determination. After hours of confrontation, the two gladiators were exhausted, but still standing. None of them surrendered, none was defeated. The audience, impressed by the skill and courage of both, began to cry out for mercy. And then came the historic moment. Emperor Titus, in an unprecedented gesture, granted freedom to the two gladiators. For the first time, a match ended without losers, and Priscus and Vero left the arena as equals, celebrated as heroes. But they weren't the only gladiators to score the Colosseum's inaugural games. Among the names that stood out was Hermes, a fighter known for his incredible agility and precision with the sword. Hermes was not as famous as Priscus and Verus, but his ability was almost supernatural. He could disarm an opponent with a single well-aimed blow, and his quick movements left the spectators mesmerized. Hermes was an example of how technique and control could be as lethal as brute force. The audience, still ecstatic with the epic fight, continued to applaud even after the end of the fight. Priscus and Vero, now free, became symbols of a unique moment in Roman history, showing that the arena could be the scene of courage and humanity, not just violence. Hermes, for his part, continued to impress audiences with his sharp skills and unbelievable quickness. He did not achieve freedom that day, but his presence marked the inaugural games as an example of mastery and dedication. These gladiators represented more than just fighters. They symbolized the human spirit, searching for purpose and meaning, even in brutal circumstances. To this day, their names remind us that true glory is not just in victory, but in the impact we leave on the world. Perhaps this is why stories like Priscus, Verus, and Hermes are still told, moving and inspiring generations. Imagine a gigantic arena full of screaming spectators in euphoria. At the center of it, not two gladiators, but a man alone facing wild beasts. This was the role of the Venatores, gladiators who fought animals in combats that mixed courage, strategy, and pure survival instinct. And among them, Carpophorus was the greatest of all. Carpophorus seemed to be afraid of nothing. He faced lions, tigers, bears, and even rhinoceroses as if it was something natural. It is said that in a single day, he killed more than 20 beasts in the arena, something so unbelievable that it made him a legend. It wasn't just strength, it was pure skill. He knew how to move, how to use speed, and how to predict the animals' attacks. Each fight was a spectacle, and the public hailed him as a true hero. But Carpophorus was not alone in the world of Venators. There were other equally skilled fighters, such as Scylax. He became famous for an extraordinary feat, defeating a lion and a tiger at the same time. Yes, you read that right. Two deadly predators together, and Scylax emerged the winner. This wasn't just skill, it was courage and a precision that few possessed. After that fight, he was treated like a star. Another name that marked the games was Demetrio. While others relied on strength, Demetrius was a strategist. He studied the behavior of animals and knew exactly the right time to attack. Her ability to dodge attacks was so impressive that it seemed choreographed. He turned every fight into a technical spectacle, something that left the audience speechless. But make no mistake, the life of a Venator was not glamorous. Each time they entered the arena, these men bet their lives. The animals were ferocious, unpredictable, and a single mistake could mean death. Many fighters did not survive for long, but Carpophorus, Scylax, and Demetrius defied all expectations. They turned danger into glory, and their stories echoed far beyond the walls of the Colosseum. For the public, these fights were not just entertainment. They symbolized something greater, the struggle of man against nature, the victory of civilization over the savage. Each time Carpophorus defeated a wild beast, it was as if the Roman Empire reasserted its dominance over the world. But for the Venatores, the fight meant something more personal. It was the chance to become more than slaves or prisoners. In the arena, they were kings, even if only for a few minutes. The Colosseum was more than a stage for fights. It was a symbol of Rome's power. Every Venator who stepped foot there knew that they were fighting not only for their life, but for a spectacle that would define their name forever. Carpophorus, Scylax, and Demetrius were not only gladiators, they were part of a ritual where life and death coexisted in perfect harmony. His deeds were not just stories. They were living legends that marked the soul of everyone who watched. Now think for a moment, what was it like to be in their shoes, facing a lion that roars so loud that it makes the ground shake, knowing that thousands of eyes are watching every move and that a single mistake can be fatal? Did they think of fear, or only of the glory that would come if they survived? These stories aren't just about struggle, are about the essence of what it means to be human, to survive, even against all odds. And don't forget to pick up your digital book, 10 Battles That Shaped the Roman Empire. It's important that you get it right now before the units run out. To be a gladiator was to fight for life, but for few, the arena offered something more, the favoritism of the powerful. This was the case of Spiculus, the gladiator who won the admiration of none other than Emperor Nero. Spiculus wasn't just a skilled fighter, he was a symbol of strength and courage, and Nero made a point of extolling him. Nero was known for his extravagant tastes, and Spiculus represented everything he valued. Whenever he won a fight, the gladiator not only received applause from the audience, but also lavish rewards from the emperor himself. Houses, lands, and wealth were given to Spiculus, elevating him from a slave to a position that many nobles would envy. To Nero, Spiculus was more than a gladiator. She was a prestigious figure, someone he trusted to the point that, in the last moments of his life, he asked him to be responsible for taking her out. However, Spiculus did not arrive in time, and Nero took his own life. Another name that marked the history of favorite gladiators was Urbicus, who shone under the reign of Hadrian. Urbicus not only racked up more than 50 arena victories, but also became one of the most respected and admired gladiators of his time. His technical skill was so impressive that Hadrian showered him with riches and rewards, making him a true celebrity of the empire. Urbicus was proof that, with determination and talent, it was possible to step out of the shadows and reach a place among the greats. These gladiators did not win the favor of the emperors by their strength or technique alone. They represented the values that Rome loved to exalt: courage, loyalty, and the ability to overcome any challenge. For the people, watching the victories of Spartacus and Urbicus was like celebrating the greatness of the empire. For emperors, supporting these gladiators was a way to connect with the crowd, bolster their popularity, and show that even the lowliest could achieve glory under their command. But being an emperor's favorite wasn't all glamour. There were risks. What happened when the emperor fell from grace? Spartacus, for example, saw his privileged position disappear with the death of Nero. Favoritism was a privilege, but also a trap. Just like in the arena, these gladiators lived under constant pressure. A slip could cost everything. These gladiators were not just fighters, they were living symbols of something greater. To the people, they represented hope, courage, and the idea that even the most oppressed could achieve glory. But favoritism also came with a weight. The closer to power, the more dangerous it became to fall from it. Spartacus, for example, even in Nero's position of trust, knew that his safety depended on the whim of a single man. Urbicus, in turn, was respected for his mastery, but was still hostage to the rules of the arena. And even with all the privileges, they couldn't escape the reality of the arena. Each combat was a life and death gamble. Each victory came at the cost of blood, sweat, and fear. Perhaps this is what made these gladiators so fascinating. They lived on the edge, between glory and abyss, between applause and oblivion. Now imagine what it was like to be in the place of Spartacus or Urbicus, receiving riches and honors from an emperor, but knowing that everything could fall apart in an instant. Did they feel grateful, or did they live in fear? Was the glory worth the risks? These gladiators remind us that even in the spotlight, life could be as ruthless as the fights they fought in the arena. Imagine an emperor stepping down from the throne and entering the arena as a gladiator. This may sound absurd, but that's exactly what Commodus did. He was not only the ruler of Rome, he wanted to be an arena star. While other emperors sought political or military conquests, Commodus sought applause and the glory of winning combat. He wore extravagant armor and entered the arena as if he were a mythological hero. The fights, however, were manipulated. His opponents were hand-picked to ensure his victory. One of these fighters was Secutor Anonymous, a gladiator with no registered identity, whose only job was to lose to the emperor. Another famous name was Latus, a provocative gladiator known for his impressive physique. Despite his skills, he also knew that he could not beat Commodus. Even though they were staged, these fights were a spectacle for the crowd. The people loved to see their emperor fighting. To them, Commodus was almost a god, someone invincible. But this admiration was not shared by the senators and the elite of Rome. To them, Commodus's behavior was a disgrace. An emperor mixing with gladiators was unthinkable, an affront to the dignity of the throne. But Commodus didn't care. He seemed to live for the applause. Each fight was an opportunity to show off and reaffirm his image as an invincible. He loved the cheers of the crowd, the thunderous applause, and the feeling of being adored. He even proclaimed himself the undefeated, further fueling his ego. While Commodus was in the arena, Rome was facing serious problems. Political and economic crises threatened the empire, but he was more interested in his performances than in governing. This disconnect only increased the hatred of the elites, who saw his behavior as a threat to Rome's future. Even so, the people idolized him. Commodus knew how to win over the masses. He offered grandiose spectacles with exotic beasts, bloody combats, and of course him as the big star. But popularity among the plebs was not enough to protect him. Commodus's end was as dramatic as his life. He was murdered in a conspiracy led by members of his own court, including Latus, the gladiator who fought him in the arena. His death marked the end of a reign that was known more for eccentricities than achievements. Commodus is remembered as one of Rome's most controversial emperors. His obsession with the arena, his staged fights, and his neglect as a ruler made him a unique figure in history. He sought glory and recognition, but ended up being betrayed by those closest to him. Now tell me, would you have applauded Commodus in the arena or sided with the senators who considered him an embarrassment to Rome? Commodus shows us how the line between being loved and hated can be as thin as the edge of a sword. The Colosseum was the stage where anything could happen. It was not just a fighting arena, but the place where legends emerged from where they least expected it. Among the many gladiators who stepped on that sand, two names stood out for very different reasons: Verus and Marcus Attilius. Verus was the example of an experienced gladiator. He wasn't just skilled, he was methodical, calculating, someone who seemed to see every move before it even happened. But what made Verus truly special was a specific fight against another legendary gladiator named Priscus. This match took place during the inaugural games of the Colosseum and was so balanced that neither managed to win. The crowd was ecstatic, and Emperor Titus, impressed by the skill and honor shown, made an unprecedented decision. He granted freedom to both. Two men entered to fight to the death and left free, united by an act of pure grandeur. While Verus represented experience and technique, Marcus Attilius symbolized the unexpected. He was not an experienced gladiator. In fact, he was a rookie, an amateur that no one knew. But when he entered the arena for the first time, he faced a consecrated champion, someone the public believed to be unbeatable. And, against all odds, Attilius won. The crowd went wild. It was proof that in the arena the impossible could happen. Attilius didn't have the track record, but he had courage and determination. His instant victory turned him into a star. The public loved stories like this, where the underdog surprised and overcame more powerful opponents. To them, Attilius was more than a gladiator. He was a living inspiration, a symbol that anyone could overcome obstacles, as long as they were willing to risk everything. Verus and Marcus Attilius were not just gladiators, they were living examples that the arena was unpredictable and full of twists and turns. The public saw them as more than fighters. They were storytellers of glory and overcoming. Every blow Verus delivered showed the experience of years in the arena, while every daring move by Attilius was proof that the unexpected could always happen. The arena not only decided winners, but created legends that echoed for generations. The spectators who packed the Colosseum didn't just watch to see blood. They were looking for stories that would connect them with something bigger. For them, Verus was the example of honor and persistence, while Attilius represented the strength of those who have nothing to lose. And that's what made the Colosseum such a unique place, the ability to transform even the most unknown into an immortal figure. To this day, these stories teach us something important. No matter how great the challenge, true greatness lies in facing what seems impossible. Verus and Marcus Attilius remind us that, whether by experience or courage, the arena was the place where ordinary men could prove that they were extraordinary. In the arena, where brute force seemed to dominate, there was a class of gladiators who proved that strategy and intelligence were also deadly weapons. These were the Rhetarians, nimble gladiators, armed with a net, a trident, and above all, a great deal of cunning. They were the embodiment of the idea that winning didn't just depend on strength, but on knowing how to use it to your advantage. The Rectarius had no shield, heavy armor, or a sword. He was vulnerable, but that vulnerability was his greatest weapon. The lightness of the body allowed for quick movements almost impossible to follow, and the trident was used to keep opponents at bay. The network was the great trump card. With a precise throw, the Rectory could immobilize the opponent, disarm him, and turn the tables in a matter of seconds. Among the most famous Rhetarians was Thraex, a gladiator of Thracian origin who became known for facing Secutors and Mamilos, much more armed and protected gladiators. While his opponents relied on armor and heavy swords, Thraex used speed as his greatest ally. He knew he couldn't block direct attacks, so he avoided direct confrontation by dodging and waiting for the right moment to attack. His ability to maneuver around the field and tire out his opponents made him a legend. And then there was Crescens, another Rectory who won the admiration of the crowds, but in a completely different way. He wasn't just strategic, he was unpredictable. Each Crescens fight was a spectacle in itself. He defied expectations, creating moves so daring that even the most experienced gladiators were surprised. For the audience, watching Crescens fight was like seeing a deadly dance, fluid, risky, and incredibly exciting. The Rhetares were the gladiators who reminded the public that intelligence and patience could overcome strength. The battles between Rhetarios and Mamilos were particularly famous. While the Mamilo, with its heavy helmet and large shield, advanced aggressively, the rectory moved lightly, dodging and trying to find an opening. It was a clash between opposites, a dance of tactics where strategy was as important as skill. These fights fascinated the public because they were more than just battles. They represented a universal lesson, the idea that intelligence, courage, and planning could overcome even the most daunting challenges. The public saw in the rectory proof that strategy was as powerful as brute force. The arenas echoed with the screams of awestruck crowds each time a retario used his net to disarm an opponent, or the trident to keep a murmillo at bay. These moments were unique because they pitted two completely different styles of combat against each other. It was a duel between strength and cunning, where the slightest slip on either side could change everything. Thracians and Crescens are remembered because they demonstrated what it meant to stay calm under pressure, even in situations where defeat seemed inevitable. They didn't just fight, they inspired. The arena was his chance to prove that, with intelligence and courage, even the most disadvantaged could win. And to think that, in today's world, we still face similar battles. Maybe it's not fights with tridents and nets, but daily challenges that require the same kind of creativity and determination. Rhetarians teach us that sometimes the secret lies in knowing how to use what we have, even if it seems little, to achieve something great. Now that we've traveled through the incredible stories of gladiators, it's clear that they were more than fighters. They were true heroes of the arena. Names like Spartacus, who led a rebellion, Verus and Priscus, who thrilled the audience with a duel without winners, and Marcus Attilius, the underdog who defeated champions, are just a few examples. We also had Crescens, the daring rhetary, and Thracians, master of speed, Spiculus, the favorite of Emperor Nero, and Carpophorus, who faced wild beasts, show that the arena was not just about strength, but about courage and cunning. We cannot forget Hermes, the agile gladiator, Urbicus, acclaimed for his victories, and Flama, who refused freedom 4 times to continue fighting. And then there is Hilarus, who left the arena as a victor, Latus, who even fought against Commodus, Gannicus, remembered for his prowess, and Crixus, a warrior with a thirst for revenge, not to mention Demetrius, known for his precision, and the iconic Scylax and Castus, who have marked their names in history with impressive feats. These gladiators were not just fighters, they were legends who faced the greatest challenges of the arena and left a legacy that echoes to this day. Each one had something special, an ability or a story that made them unique. And remember, whenever you want to know how Rome became the largest empire in antiquity, just go to the pinned comment and get your digital book, The 10 Battles That Shaped the Roman Empire. Get it right now because the units are limited. Oh, and before you go, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel. See you next time.